Hey everybody out there, my name is Sean Joy from TechRaptor, aka Dragnix from YouTube, and this is March of Industry. $9.99 came out on the Steam store a little while ago at this point. It is a strategy and simulation game where you sell weapons that you make for the motherland. Because of course it's the motherland, why wouldn't it be anything else at this point? Now this is developed by Archive Entertainment. They produced 8-bit MMO. But before I begin, want to make sure you guys know this key was obtained from the developer for the purposes of looking at the game critically. Now, that won't affect my opinion, but you should know that. And boy, am I going to be critical of this game. You can get a lot for $10 nowadays. Well, I mean, you can get some things, but you can get a lot of good games for $10 with all the Steam sales that are going on. So to ask for $10 for a game can be a reasonable, endeavor for developers. Especially when you don't have much content. And unfortunately for March of Industry, it has very little content and a lot of problems. And I'm going to go into it by starting this new game and going through it at this point. Okay, so the idea of the game is to create weapons. How do you do that? Well, first you buy a machine, an input machine for example. We'll put it up here. And you use materials and convert them into either other materials or specifically weapons. So I'm going to take this sand and put it into the conveyor belts here, and that's going to produce glass. Now the glass I could sell on its own, but it's not really useful in this case. What I want to do is drag it back to be redone once again. And so now they're making discs. And then I'll put the discs in there. And now I have disc launchers, which are weapons. I can sell those weapons, and I've completed my task. Simple enough, right? But of course, doing that on a one-by-one basis doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. Now we have a 2-input machine, because now we have tin and copper. Tin and copper will make bronze. So, for example, let us make it here. One conveyor belt there, and we will put a little conveyor belt here. Alright, we'll buy a tin, and we'll buy a copper, and that will make bronze. Alright, well, what can I do with that bronze? Well, if I put it into the little machine here, it makes a blunderbuss. I can sell that off. Now, of course, obviously you want to automate things a little bit, and why would I need to drag that all the way over here? So, okay, cool. All I have to do now is put the appropriate materials at the start of this. So, 1 tin. Let's actually do 3 tins. And 3 coppers. And it'll automate for the fact of selling at this point. So I've made 3 blunderbusses. I'm going to sell these. Simple enough, right? Well, what happens if you mix things that don't necessarily go together? What happens if I put a tin and some sand in there? Doesn't look like it works. What about, I don't know, some glass and tin? Still, you will have to figure out exactly what combinations are available for you when you go and, do bigger and better things with your factory. Now, for example, I have the ability to use boxes now. Doing this one by one doesn't make a lot of sense, but the game allows you to automate the process. So, I'm going to sell some of these other stuff here. I'm going to buy a box loader at the back here to load all the weapons that I will get. Put an empty box at the back there. Unloader here and here. And then I'm going to buy a tin box and a copper box. And now, as you see here, it automates the process. Now, of course, this is going to take a while, but I do have a fast forward button. Oh, wait, I don't at this point. Because, well, that'd be too simple to give all the options at the start of the game at this point. Now, I can wait for this to happen and, things like that, but it's going to take a little bit of time. Let's talk a little bit about the interface and the aesthetic of this game. Now, the game doesn't look that great, let's be honest here. When you zoom in, it's obviously very pixely. It does have some clean animations and a little bit of the machine portions here. But, I mean, it's not going for a big, you know, graphical experience at this point. But it's also not that great to look at. Part of the aesthetic problem, too, is that you will start to hear the same lines over and over again. Like, let's see. I'm going to sell one of these blunderbusses if I can grab them.
The enemy will quake in fear.
Okay, the enemy will quake in fear. Okay. Sure.
Very good weapon.
Very good weapons. Okay, good. You'll hear those kind of lines over and over and over again. And in particular, it'll get annoying when you have it at fast forward and it says it every single time. Your ears will start to bleed after a while. It's actually a known fact about this game. Now, am I almost done here? Let's see. Well, we got 64 blunderbusses. I could sell them right now. In fact, I will. Cool. So now I've got the ability to reach 7,000 B at this point, whatever B is. I'm assuming that's billion at this point. But this already presents a problem. Notice how I grabbed the box here, and now I want to put these back. I got to load them in one by one at this point. I could try grabbing them all, except that interface doesn't exist. One of my major complaints about this game is the lack of the interface options in question. So for example here, what happens if I wanted to, you know, delete all this? Can't. What happens if I want to try to sell all this? Can't. It will sell weapons and items, but it's very selective about what it allows you to do and what it doesn't allow you to do. Alright, now I've got iron. Okay, cool. So now if I build another machine, just for the sake of room here, let's pop an iron in there, $1 billion iron. A magnet. Interesting. Alright, well, what could go with magnets? It's an interesting question here. Okay, magnets. I don't know what would go with magnets. Well, we still have the sand. Let's see, glass. That doesn't seem like it would go with magnets very well. Let's see. Let's put it back in there. A disc? Maybe a disc will go with a magnet? Let's find out. Oh, of course, it creates a katana launcher. Because that makes perfect sense. Okay, I'm going to come back to you guys in a little bit because I'm going to show you exactly how you can automate a little bit more, you know, a little bit off screen. Alright, so what I've got here is a setup that will create katana launchers for me. So we're just going to go right into it by showing you, I'm going to buy an iron box and put it here. That will put magnets out this way, put them into this box, which will load into this segment. And then sandbox will be bought here, will turn into glass, will turn into discs, so on and so forth. So let's get right to it. And we'll speed it up at this point. Now, this is all you do in this game. This is nothing else but other than that. And yes, that is the sound of your ears ringing because of the back and forth hammering and the whatever the hell that other sound is supposed to be. Unfortunately, this doesn't make a lot of good options in terms of gameplay, and in particular, one big problem is this. This is all the resources and weapons that you can create at the base game. That's it. Including the question marks, of course, but that's not a lot for a game, especially a $10 game at this point. There's a lot of problems underneath the surface, too. As you see here, okay, it's creating all this stuff. Once in a while, you will see the case where, like, a magnet didn't make it into the box in question. That usually has to do with the length of the conveyor belt in question, but, you know, it happens. But you'll notice how everything went smoothly there because everything was set up rather well for me. What happens if I accidentally screw up a little bit? Let's just say, I don't know, put an empty box there so that I can sell these things. Let's buy the iron box again. Oh, and oops, I forgot to turn the speed off. Alright, well, you need to buy a sand box. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Look what happened. Now, it's still working somewhat, but part of the reason for the barriers is stuff like this. Is the fact that you can have things not go awry because you didn't expect, you know, one little thing to go well at this point. Now, you could argue that, okay, you made the mistake of, not setting up the assembly line properly. But on the flip side, it's really annoying because it feels like there should be, switches on these kind of things, like the box loader. It would have made sense to implement a switch on there to say, hey, look, I don't want to, turn this on yet until I get all these items in there at this point. Hold off for a second. That would have made a lot of sense. Instead, what you get is this sort of mess. And now I got to pretty much sell all these resources in order for it to go, to the next portion. It's also little things like this. So this looks rather nice at this point. Know what I can do though. Let me move this box loader. Oops. Yeah, you see, you can have multiple items on the same location to the point where you don't even know where things are at times because they can be on the same location. This also goes true for resources. So for example, in one case, I accidentally bought 2 sand boxes, and then all of a sudden I had a shit ton of resources coming out that I did not expect. It's little things like that that really bother me about this game, and really doesn't make a lot of sense for the type of game that it is. It's supposed to be a strategy simulation game, and yet it forgets the actual control portion on several levels at this point. It's also inconsistency with the controls. Like, zooming around at this point and moving around, I feel like it's way too sensitive. I mean, this is, let's see, one quick press. One quick press. I'm already halfway down the screen at this point. Even if I zoom in one quick press, okay, fine. That may get me to that level, but I really don't want to be that zoomed in. It feels like the sensitivity should be adjusted to what zoom level I'm at. That makes sense for a game like this, but instead they don't do it here. There's major problems all over the place, and it doesn't help the problem of one critical thing. It's boring. Granted, there are times that the strategy genre can do well in this sort of environment, but here it just doesn't make a lot of sense after a while because you end up doing the same thing over and over again, and you're limited by the amount of options that you've got. There's not anything to keep you going, and especially when the game can be beaten in under an hour. Now, again, New Game Plus mode, as well as the fact that it even says on the store page, you can beat this game in under an hour. It doesn't excuse it, though. Mod support is great and all. I admit that, a lot more games need mod support. But what you have to realize with mod support is that it is not a call for the community to pick up sort of, I don't want to say your slack, but to pick up the, hammer to make you content. It's supposed to be there to enhance the experience, not create the experience. And I felt like the mod support in this case was to create the experience. Like, oh, here's your base level tools. Even though the tools aren't that great, go at it. I'm not sure why I'd want to mod this game at this point. I really don't. I mean, especially because you're limited in your options here. And what are you going to create? More weapons? I mean, can you create any new mechanics or anything like that? Unfortunately, that's a resounding no. In the end, March of Industry is a very simple game, but does not deserve the price tag that is currently shown on the screen in terms of $10. What you've seen here is what the game has to offer. You don't get any new goals. You don't get any really new mechanics. Once you get a New Game Plus, you can increase the value of what you sell items by with national, spirit at this point. But that just makes it a little bit easier. So why? Look, avoid March of Industry. I'm sorry, but the game does not have enough mechanics. And even for the most simple, strategy lover or simulation lover, this game does not do the job in the end. Alright, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and keep on gaming.